The house smelled of something warm. Not just food, but memories: roasted rice, sweet ginger tea, and the faint scent of rain still clinging to the wooden porch outside. For the first time in what felt like forever, the dinner table was full. That evening, the sun dipped gently behind the hills, casting golden light into the kitchen. The mountain air was soft. And inside, 3 people sat close, tired, maybe, but together: Hung, Tieu Ca, and their daughter Tieu Han. It wasn't just a meal. It was a reunion. And it tasted like home. A family reunited. Hung had been gone for days, called away for an emergency business trip, one he had tried to shorten 100 different ways. Every night, he stared at photos of his wife and child. Every morning, he missed the sound of Tieu Han's laugh echoing down the hallway. So when he finally stepped out of the car and saw them waiting on the front steps, Tieu Ca, in her soft white dress, holding their baby son in her arms, and little Tieu Han bouncing on her heels, his heart cracked open. "Daddy!" Han shrieked, racing across the path. Hung dropped everything. The suitcase fell to the ground. The tired CEO, polished and sharp, became just a father in that moment, kneeling arms wide, catching his little girl mid-run as she threw herself into his chest. "I missed you so much," she whispered. "I missed you more," he said, holding her close. Tieu Ca smiled quietly. No words, just eyes full of love. "I'm a big girl now," she said proudly, her tiny hands wobbling as she tried to balance the teapot. A few drops spilled. Everyone laughed. Hung took a sip. "Best tea I've ever had." "Really?" Han beamed. "Absolutely. Michelin star tea service," he teased, and she giggled so hard she dropped her chopsticks. Even the baby stirred in his cradle nearby, as if laughing with them. Soft words, full hearts. Between bites and laughter, they told stories of Tieu Han's drawings, of Hung's long flights and funny meetings, of Tieu Circus' latest herbal recipes. Then came a moment of stillness. Hung looked at his wife across the table, her hair tied back, cheeks flushed from the stove. He took her hand. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" she asked. "For holding everything together. For this table. For this peace. For being my home." Her eyes shimmered. She nodded, blinking fast. "I was never alone," she whispered back. "You were always with me. Even when you were far." Laughter that lingered. That night, as the candles burned low and Tieu Han climbed into her father's lap with sleepy eyes, the house felt more alive than ever. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything they needed was right there in the warmth of soup, the sound of laughter, and the silence of hearts that no longer had to ache. And long after the dishes were cleared and the children tucked in, Hung and Tieu Ca stood together by the window, listening to the wind carry their laughter into the hills, because sometimes the loudest joy is not in music or celebration, but in the quiet clinking of bowls, the soft smile of a tired mother, and the arms of a father who finally made it home. After the table had been cleared and the last crumbs of sesame rice had been wiped away, the family moved to the small living room beside the kitchen. The fire crackled gently in the hearth, painting soft orange light across the walls. Outside, the mountain wind hummed quietly through the trees, but inside, everything felt still and safe. Hung sat on the rug, cross-legged in his casual sweater, his usually serious face now full of softness. Tieu Han, wearing her bunny pajamas, climbed into his lap with her picture book. Tieu Ca brought over a small cup of warm ginger tea and sat beside them, holding their youngest son, just over 7 months old now, no longer in an incubator, but healthy and strong. And then, it happened. a sound that stopped everything. Tieu Han was flipping the pages of her book dramatically, trying to do funny voices. "This is the big bear, and he says grrr," she roared, flapping her arms. Hung chuckled. "That's the scariest bear I've ever seen." Tieu Ca laughed softly, rocking the baby on her lap. But suddenly, from that tiny body in her arms, came a sound so small and so beautiful, a giggle. Then another, and another. It was the baby, his very first laugh. Tieu Ca froze. Hung sat up straight. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. They both leaned in. The baby looked at his sister, still pretending to roar, and let out another bubbly laugh, full of light, full of life. Tieu Circus' hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled instantly. Tieu Han gasped. "Did I make him laugh? Mommy, Daddy?" He laughed. Hung stood, scooped his daughter into one arm, and leaned over to kiss his baby boy on the head. "He laughed," he repeated, his voice cracking just slightly. "He laughed, ... he really did." Why that moment mattered. It wasn't just a baby giggle. It was more than a milestone. It was a declaration, a sign, a promise, that after months of fear, hospitals, kidnappings, storms, and sleepless nights, they had made it through. That this little life, once held together by machines and prayers, now laughed freely in the arms of the people who had never stopped fighting for him. Tieu Ca whispered to her son, her forehead against his tiny one, "You're not just our miracle. You're our joy." Later that night, they couldn't stop smiling. The baby had fallen asleep after all the excitement, but the warmth he left lingered in every corner of the house. They told the story over and over to each other, even though they had all been there. Hung even called Mr. Peter Nyan his father, just to say, "He laughed. Dad, our boy laughed." And on the other end of the call, even Peter Stern, distant, always composed, chuckled with something that sounded a lot like pride. A new chapter begins. That night, before bed, Tieu Han kissed her baby brother on the forehead and whispered, "You can laugh more tomorrow, okay?" Hung kissed his wife's hand and said, "Let's remember this forever." And Tieu Ca, staring up at the ceiling, whispered to the stars, "Thank you for laughter, for family, and for bringing us back to each other." Life lesson: the most beautiful moments are often the quietest. In a world that often celebrates noise-loud successes, grand gestures, and public celebrations, it's easy to overlook the quiet moments that truly shape our lives. But sometimes, a soft laugh, a shared meal, or a baby's first giggle speaks louder than 1,000 words. The reunion of Hung, Tieu Ca, and their children reminds us that family is not measured by perfection, but by presence. The joy they found around a simple dinner table was not the result of wealth or luxury, but of love, genuine, imperfect, steady love. When the baby laughed for the first time, it wasn't just a milestone, it was a symbol of healing. It was a reminder that life, no matter how fragile, always finds a way to bloom again. That laughter, especially after pain, is a quiet kind of victory. This story teaches us that we don't always need to chase more. Sometimes, what we need most is already in front of us: a warm home, safe arms, people who stay, and moments that make us feel alive. Happiness is not found in things, it's found in togetherness. In shared soup, whispered thank yous, sleepy good nights, and the laughter of a child who knows they are safe. And so, the lesson is simple but powerful. The most beautiful parts of life happen in the soft light of ordinary days when we stop running. Sit down with the people we love, and let the warmth of their presence remind us that we're already home. As time passes, we forget the details, the color of the dishes on the table, the exact words someone said, the clothes we wore on a certain day. But what we never forget is how we felt. Tieu Ca will never forget how it felt to see her daughter run toward her, frightened but safe. Han will never forget the first time he heard his son laugh, a sound so small yet powerful enough to mend a tired heart. And Tieu Han, though still so young, will carry the memory of warm arms, familiar voices, and the certainty that no matter what happens, her parents will always come for her. This is the lesson life gently hands us. In the end, love is not about the big moments, it's about staying through the hard ones. When storms come in, they always do. It is not our titles, money, or achievements that hold us together. It is presence. It is the quiet courage to show up again and again, even when the world feels uncertain. True love is not proven in perfection. It is proven when dinner is late but everyone still laughs, when the baby cries and someone stays up to soothe them, when fear visits but no one runs. These are the memories that last. These are the roots of home. So let us remember, it is not what we build outside that makes us rich, but what we nurture inside our hearts and within our homes. Joy is found in closeness, healing in gentleness, and meaning in togetherness. Hold your people close. Look them in the eyes. Say the words that matter. Because one day, long after everything else fades, it's the sound of shared laughter around a dinner table that will echo the longest. So let us remember, it is not what we build outside that makes us rich, but what we nurture inside our hearts and within our homes. Joy is found in closeness, healing in gentleness, and meaning in togetherness. Hold your people close. Look them in the eyes. Say the words that matter. Because one day, long after everything else fades, it's the sound of shared laughter around a dinner table that will echo the longest.